Good afternoon. I'm Joe Duffner. My company is DirectLink Technologies. We're very happy to be here today as a sponsor and part of the Big Data event. DirectLink Technologies is a data center, co-location facility, and technology center. We house data. We house the IT infrastructure of our customers. An interesting fact about DirectLink is our ownership. Everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with the Boscov's department stores. We're owned by Albert Boscov. A lot of people know the retailing end of our business, but Albert Boscov actually owned a number of technology companies, and he started DirectLink in 2006 as an effort to create and retain high-tech jobs in our area. It was part of his philanthropic efforts, as he always liked to give back to the community where he was born and raised, which is where we're located in Reading. But he does the same thing with communities where he locates his retail stores, and I know there's a few in this area. So if you'd like any more information about DirectLink, I've got some literature on the back table, and please help yourself to a card sleeve for your cell phone. And I'd like to introduce Patrick Reynolds of SessionM. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? I think you're going to file this under the heading of, and now for something completely different. So I was just asked if the CMO stood for Chief Medical Officer. I wish that were true, but it's actually just Chief Marketing Officer. Yeah, maybe it didn't. Now I'm actually kind of terrified. Maybe I'm pretty happy to be where I am, actually. Humbled to be here. I've seen presentations today about how do we find, how do we solve kind of open-ended murder cases? How do we keep people from going into cardiac arrest before they even know they have an issue? How do we deliver better experience, better quality experience at the point of healthcare delivery? And now I'm going to talk to you about how do you find the best coffee near you wherever you happen to be. How can you find a sweater in your size that matches your outfit, and so on and so forth. So it's a different application of big data. It's actually not significantly less complicated. In some ways, it's more complicated. It's very different data sets. But I want to take you through how some of the brands that you're all familiar with are using big data to hopefully deliver better experiences to you every day in sort of small ways and hopefully in larger ways over time. Cool? So has anybody heard of GDPR? Does that expression mean anything to you? Okay, so there is a sort of a rise in Europe in particular where people are gravely concerned about what kind of data is being collected, by whom, what those companies or entities are doing with that data, and what rights they have to it. They create the data, but it kind of goes off into the cloud, and they don't know, how it's being used moving forward. And one of the central tenets of GDPR is, as you're probably familiar with, the right to be forgotten. So that's a very legitimate issue we'll touch on at some depth in a minute. But one of the things that I think you're seeing more and more consumer-facing companies talk about is the right to be remembered. You have a right to be the beneficiary from the data that you're generating. And what we're finding as sort of an intermediary broker is when brands and companies, whether the department stores or coffee shops or Nike or anybody else that we work with, when they put data to use in service to the person that created that data, it's a very tenable situation. There is no demand to be forgotten. There's actually an interest in giving more data to get more experience delivery. So we're going to talk about that. So at the root of this is I generate a lot of data. I'm very aware that many media properties and a lot of for-profit businesses are gathering that data. I don't seem to get any of it back. They seem to make more and more money. That's a dilemma and a problem that people have. And it's obviously very legitimate. I personally feel the same way. So at a sort of macro level, people are very concerned how our government is using data, how sometimes other governments are using that data, to what end, for what purposes, how is it gathered, where does it go? So there's a lot of concern about that. At a consumer level, it's not quite that hot yet. But there are a lot of people who are saying, what do you do with all this? And how do you collect it anyways? How do you know that I want a sweater? I go to the Gazette and I see that sweater that I just looked at 10 minutes ago. How did that ad get there? Like, what are you watching me everywhere I go? And the short answer is kind of yes, you are with clickstream data. So it's not this dire, but it's almost trending in this direction if it's not handled very delicately. So as people may or may not know, there's passive ways that you're generating data and it's being collected 24/7, 365. Your car is an amazing data creation vehicle. Where you are, how fast you are, how hot it is outside, what are you listening to, are you on the phone, where did you stop? All of these things are being monitored and collected all the time. It goes to your insurance company, it goes to a lot of different people. Many of these are for actual very good uses. They're creating different, better ways to monitor traffic and do things with big data to make your life a little bit better, but you don't really know where it goes. So there's this sort of passive ambient data that you're creating and it's being collected. And increasingly though, there's very voluntary, active ways that you're creating data that's being collected and stored and put back to use for you, and these are going like this. So Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, Cortana, that's definitely the smallest of that lot, but that's the proverbial tallest midget of that group. You're asking it to do stuff, and it's collecting that, but it's giving you a benefit, so you keep doing it. It's like a valet for you. So I ask things, it knows where I am, it knows what I'm searching, it knows what I'm looking for, it knows what I'm making. All of that goes up into the cloud. I know that, but because it makes my life a little bit easier, I'm okay with that. Soon, the house of the future is going to be just one enormous sensor. Everything you are doing, everywhere you go, everything you're doing is going to collect data, and that data will be stored somewhere to some end as yet to be determined. So the companies that we work with are gathering all kinds of information about you, mostly not this kind of information, things like you used an app, you went to a website, what's your geolocation, some social graph stuff. And they're building a composite of you off of this data. The key is they're using that data to deliver you back a better experience. Not for somebody else, but for you. So the things that you do leave breadcrumbs that say, based off of what this person's done in the past, what they're doing right now, here's what would be good for them in the future, and let's see how that works. So the first thing as you're gathering all this data, there's basically three kinds that we work with. There's declared data, what you say about you. Observed data, what we witness through your behavior, mostly online, but also sort of when you trip a beacon and geolocation stuff. And then there's appended data, things we calculate on you with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Those, based off of that, we can ascribe this data to an individual, every individual for Starbucks. Anybody go to Starbucks here? Every one of you has your own little baby cloud. So Starbucks has a profile of you it keeps in the cloud, and everything you do with Starbucks and some things you do outside of Starbucks is kept up in the cloud. And it's able to then deliver the kind of experiences and offers that make your life a little bit easier. You don't want to wait in line. You don't want to use cash. All these different things are sort of an output of big data application. So it associates the 4 billion transactions that we ingest every day with the people that made them individually. It then calculates what would the next best action. I live in Boston. I'm in Pittsburgh. I turn on my phone when I get to the airport this morning. It says, this is where there's a Starbucks. And by the way, you have an offer that you can redeem. You can use it in your wallet, et cetera. So it's sort of one step ahead of me, which is vital when you're talking about coffee. Really important. So we calculate the next best action, and then it is delivered. And then with branching, you accept the offer, you decline the offer, it learns, and it makes the offer smarter and better next time. So here's just some really concrete examples of how brands are using big data to make your life just a little bit better, if done appropriately. This is a tragic but true situation I woke up the other day, I got into the car to go to the office at 6:33. Oh goodness, that was September 11th. That escaped me until just now. So 6:33, and it was going to be a robust hour 33 commute. Yes, let's do that. But now I know. So if people are waiting for me at 8, they're going to have to wait a little bit longer because it's going to be a little bit more than that, right? Big data companies like Spotify. I listen to these songs through kind of the wisdom of crowds model. Oh, if you like those songs, you'll probably like these songs too, and you get some discovery and forced exposure to songs that you might not have listened to otherwise. Perfect application of big data my data being used to give me a better experience. As has been mentioned a few times, I'll spend less time on this. Putting my activity levels into perspective is great. Tying it to my watch, tied to my EKG, tied to, is this a normal amount of activity, less, more, is productive and helpful for me. The Starbucks we mentioned before. Here's a great one. If you're going over to, again, I live in Boston, going to Cambridge, hey, FYI, the road that you're probably going to take, which is exactly the road I would have taken, is not available to you. Saves me a bunch of time. I didn't even know I needed that, but it anticipated that. This last one is my favorite. Anybody here use a personal shopping service of any kind, an app, anything? No? Yeah? So this is a client of ours, and so I fill out, I get the app, I download it, and it asks you a bunch of questions. I'm going to get jeans and a shirt and like a sweater, okay? That's what they do. They send you clothes. My occupation, oh, sure, I'll tell them that. Am I a parent? Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with jeans and sweaters, but okay, I tell them that. So we're telling them more and more information that comes back to me in the form of spot-on product recommendations and engaging me in a way that's really, really intelligent. And Stitch Fix is one of many examples of people that are using big data to personalize delivery experience in both the service level and the product level for people, and it's really kind of usurping the power that retail used to have. Obviously, Amazon leads the way in this regard. Any questions about that? No? Does anybody here feel that volunteering data to get a better experience is worthwhile or still too great a risk or cost? Which?
I'd say it depends. It's a cost benefit. It depends on the value to me.
And
There's times when I'm definitely not going to. In fact, there's times when I use fake identities. I probably shouldn't say that to you, but right. And
Oh, we knew that.
All my students I teach do that too. The whole college thing now is they set up whole profiles.
Sure.
And decide, right? So,
We see a lot of AOL addresses when people sign up.
but there are many that, I would. It depends.
What would it take? What's the quid pro quo that would work for you? Let's say you're an automobile manufacturer. If I said to you, you're driving too fast, the engine's running too hot, and I can save you a lot of money on service if you would make adjustments.
Because it's the value trusted brand. The coffee and the clothes and
Too much?
it's too much.
You don't want them to know kind of where you are, what you're doing?
But my car, that's a more important relationship.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's also what we are thinking about trust in the data. That's it. And which company, we know the people and all this. Because we in Germany, we have the GfK, you would say, the Gesellschaft für Konsumforschung. So if we trust companies, we would give them more data. If this is an anonymous process, then we are maybe a little bit skeptical. Especially in Germany, we don't want to give them much data. But in case we want to know a little bit more for the future and predictive analysis and how we can make our life easier, then it's helpful. But as I said, I started this, it's a trust issue.
Trust between you and the brand, the specific brand. And that's exactly what we're finding.
Brand or the company or the people, I would give the data.
Right. So if I filled out this kind of questionnaire and got extremely generic product, I would restrict access to my data. If I was getting extremely bad, which it looks like I got, by the way, on Spotify. I don't know how this happened, but anyways, if I am consistently getting bad recommendations off of my data, I will restrict access to my data because it's just vaguely irritating, right? But things like this make my life a lot better. By the way, I never once consciously opted into this. Google once never said to me, do you want to know how long it takes you? First of all, how do you know I'm going to work? Whole other question. But do you want to get this every day? I think I probably would have said no, but since it wasn't asked, now I'm like, this is helpful. Or where is your car? Hey, when I get to the airport, I'll turn on my phone in Boston and be like, remember, you're on the 8th level, MM. That's kind of good to know. So there's quid pro quo, but I wouldn't want it all the time. And I don't know who else gets this. Does my wife get this? Who gets this? I have one Apple ID, 4 people in the family. Anybody with teenage kids? Watch that shit carefully, because you will see some stuff you did not want to be a part of. Every software update is like, woo, all right. My daughter's touring Pitt right now, and hopefully I'll learn more about that later on my phone. So yeah, if it's, I sort of feel the same way. If it's good, I'll enable it. If it's bad, I will disable it. The other thing that we're finding out are 78% of people that have a bad experience online, just online, will never go back to that business again, online or brick and mortar. So the stakes are really, really high, which is why people are working so hard to mine this big data to deliver experiences that make people want to continue to go, because the stakes are so high. It's one bad retail experience for Amazon to win another customer.
So you talked a lot about how important trust is to the consumer brand.
Yeah.
And that's mostly seems to be driven by the accuracy of the predictions that they're able to make. To what extent does transparency play into that? I mean, Amazon knows a lot about my purchase history.
Yeah.
They may recommend items that people have purchased similar to my profile, but they also recommend, advertisements. What strength did the advertisement have? Did they not show me something that I would have rather had? And how can I see that?
That's a great question. So yeah, what it does with the data comes in a lot of things. It may say, well, it's time for you to reorder coffee. That's a great benefit. If it's a sneaky end around to deliver an ad impression, now it's eroded confidence, right?
Right. I guess the question I'm getting at is, how would I know if businesses aren't willing to make the data use transparent? Right? They might say it's an advertisement, but that doesn't mean that I know, is that a random advertisement? Or
Right. No, that's a legitimate question. Most of the stuff that we do is completely non-advertising based. It's product recommendation, experience recommendation. Has nothing to do with advertising. But you can imagine everybody is trying to make the optimal amount of money in the world that we live in, different than healthcare, different than a lot of other things. So if they can deliver an impression at a real premium because they know exactly who you are, what you do, what you like and what you don't like, most people will, probably including Amazon because they have such a monopoly. Yes.
One of the other things I have questions about is when a bias is exploited for gain, right? So say the driving example, for example, say they're collecting a lot of data and people probably that know they're collecting data, right, are driving slower, this, that, the other thing. But maybe the statistics might show that some people that drive faster are actually in less accidents, right? But that's not according to what the normal expectation would be. But I don't expect to get a discount on my insurance for that because that's not socially what's expected as an outcome. So I think until you start seeing some of the other side of it, the trust concerns will be there, where as if you don't see the benefits for the perceived biases in the data that are socially accepted are not refuted with the data in a positive experience for the consumer, there's always going to be some mistrust there.
I think that's extremely spot on. And I think we could kind of bridge these two conversations where I might have a Big Mac for lunch every day, pizza for dinner, and like Judge Kavanaugh, beer. But I never go to the doctor. I'm healthy as a horse, and I say, well, this regimen works for me, but now you're going to ding me because I have a quote unquote unhealthy lifestyle, because that's what the data says. But there's other metrics that sort of. So that's where trust comes in. Yeah, I can shut down the act. In the consumer world, the world that I live in, it's extremely simple, going back to the first slide, to restrict access to your data. It's not that hard to go off the grid. It really isn't. You can use an alias, you can do all kinds of things. When it gets into things like Waze and other things that are, it's harder. It's harder. Yeah.
And crossing over piece of this corollary is the insurance company versus the provider.
Sure.
Because, the studies show overwhelmingly people trust theoretically their provider. But yet you get into these systems like Kaiser where you're the insurance company or the it's that whole thing, right? People don't want to share health data with insurance companies, period. But they don't mind sharing it with their provider if there's a value. So that's.
Yeah, that gets into, if you go for physical, at least where I go, there's a new questionnaire. It's like, are you sad? Do you feel anxious? And I'm like, who says yes to any, like, why? I could come in with a noose around my neck. I'd be like, I'm great. Like, why? I know it doesn't help me to say yes. How many drinks do you have a week? 3. Right?
Self-reported data.
Exactly. It's like, come on. Because I don't have the trust that that's going to come back to help me. That one I answer truthfully, no. But yeah, I mean, so this is, again, goes to the prior 2 meetings great, presentations great, is it's all in the lens that you apply to this. An insurer sees the picture one way. Someone else could come over here and see it entirely differently. There is an amount of interpretation, as you brought up in your presentation, to the data. Data is not just like absolute. It's all on how do you want to put it together. What kind of a picture do you want to see? What kind of data do you want to build? How selective are you in the data that you carve out? It's all extremely subjective, so you're right. But I think this whole thing is, if you feel it's enlightened self-interest to grant access to your data, you do. And if you think it's not, there's no benefit to you, or you get, if I tell you all this stuff about me and I get very generic stuff back, or I get tons of ads because now I told you something about me, I gotta nip that in the bud. Any other questions? Thank you guys very much. Hopefully this is a little mental sorbet for your extremely worthwhile murder, healthcare, cancer, heart attack conversations, but I appreciate it. Thank you guys.